Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club, your exclusive access to the industry's most successful leaders. These experts have closed thousands of deals, generating hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're here to share their strategies, insights, and leadership lessons that can fast-track your career. But the learning doesn't stop here. Join the Investment Banking Leaders Club at ibleadersclub.com for even more exclusive insights, leadership frameworks, and career-accelerating resources and events. Thanks for joining us, and best of luck on your growth journey. Today's guest is someone who has quietly built one of the most successful and innovative investment banking franchises in Central and Eastern Europe. I'm with Gábor Szendrői, who's the founder and managing partner of Concorde MB Partners, widely regarded as the leading mid-market investment bank in Hungary. And he's also a board member of IMAP, one of the most active global M&A advisory networks. But what makes Gábor's story particularly compelling is not just the firm he's built, but also how he's built it. After starting in investment banking in Paris and spending a decade at McKinsey across multiple industries and continents, Gábor made a deliberate move into entrepreneurship, building a boutique from scratch, navigating a changing post-crisis market, and ultimately creating a firm that now holds around 20 to 25% market share in its home country. And along the way, he's developed something truly unique, a model that now accounts for roughly 20% of his deals, but far more in terms of his impact. This is the management buy-in, or MBI model, a model that just doesn't help close transactions, but creates an entirely new buyer universe. It builds a powerful network of operators and investors and acts as a long-term origination engine for the firm. But in today's conversation, we'll explore how to build a leading boutique in a non-core market, why most bankers think about origination the wrong way, and how creating your own model can become your greatest competitive advantage. So Gábor, excited to have you with us here today. Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast.
Thank you very much, and welcome to all the listeners.
Thank you. Why don't we start? You started your career in investment banking in Paris and then spent 10 years at McKinsey, as I mentioned, which is a very structured and high-performing environment. What's ultimately pushed you to step away from that path and build something of your own?
So, to put it simply, I lost my family license to lead a global life. That was the most important thing. By then, we already had 2 daughters, which we then grew by another 2. So we altogether have a family of 4 daughters. Also, after McKinsey, I had a very short career at a larger corporation where I realized that what I loved about McKinsey was more the leadership and not the management part of it, of managing people. So I quickly realized that I need to go back to professional service. And then I looked around in my own country, I talked to people and realized that investment banking at that point of time lagged some talents. So we saw a potential of starting it on our own. So then we created a startup in this space.
Love that. International, family, the desire for leadership over management, and then obviously starting a firm, really entrepreneurial. And you mentioned to me that you really enjoyed over time was working with mid-market businesses rather than large multinationals. What is it about mid-market specifically that really drew you in?
So I think there are 2 types of people in our industry. One that love reading at least, if not their names, at least their deals in the press. And the others who loved working with real entrepreneurs who made their lives. And I'm not saying that you can't do very large deals with real entrepreneurs. What I'm arguing is that most of the cases in large deals, you work with managers and you don't work with entrepreneurs. You work for managers of large corporations, which are wonderful people and wonderful corporations. But there is a difference between a successful entrepreneur and a successful manager. And my taste is the latter.
And I guess as an entrepreneur yourself, you can build that connection, which makes a lot of sense. And in the early days, you tried to build a business linked to international buyers, but shared that didn't quite work out as expected. What did you learn from that period?
So look, as you rightfully said, myself and my partner at that time, with whom who is still my partner today, with whom we started this business, we came from strategic consulting. So we didn't really had the knowledge base of investment banking. So there were a couple of things that we didn't know, and we thought that we would know better. And the first thing was that we would build a Central Eastern Europe focused franchise focusing on buy sides. And we did it together with Wells Fargo. So we became an allied network member of Wells Fargo covering Central Eastern Europe. And we thought that we can build Central Eastern European deals to American firms. So we wanted to build our business basically entirely on buy sides. And what we needed to realize after 2 years of struggling is that while buy sides are very good businesses, and I still believe that specifically, at least in the mid-market, it makes lots of sense to do buy sides as well, but you can't build a firm exclusively on buy sides. So that was the first learning. And the second learning was that there is this wisdom within investment banking that you have to focus on deal execution, at least in our experience with mid-sized deals, because some of the specificities, you need to be able to juggle a rather large number of deals and increase the number of deals to have enough closings at the end of the day, rather than focusing on a smaller number of deals and try to maximize your success in those. So I think these were the two learnings, which after 2 years made us change our own strategy and brought us to different other directions.
Super interesting. It makes a lot of sense. Obviously, that variety in knowledge and services that you offer, and of course, more successful win rate versus necessarily just putting in a lot more volume. So again, really interesting take. I think after the post-financial crisis as well, I think international buyers became less active, I think particularly in Hungary, if I remember rightly from our discussion. How did that change the way you then approach deals and origination?
So when I was talking about strategy change, what we did is actually we acquired a local firm in Hungary which focused on the Hungarian mid-market activities. Now, we took it over because they were struggling. That was right after the financial crisis. And they were struggling because it was not a struggle for them to win new mandates, but it was a struggle for them to bring them to closure. And let me remind you, that was the start of this political era, which it was 2010, 2011, when we had this new populistic government coming in place, which only after 16 years, a couple of weeks ago, got replaced. But the founder of this business concluded that the reason why he struggles with finding buyers was because Hungary lost the sexiness of the economy because of these populistic political ways of doing things. And so we took over the business, and we thought that where we are going to be able to bring value to the business and value to our customers or clients is that we will be even better in identifying international buyers for their firms. Because indeed, after Hungary and Central Eastern European countries were entering into the EU in 2004, most of the mid-market companies have been taken over by mid-market companies coming from the Western world. Now, when we took over the business, we were very successful in securing mandates. And then we struggled again finding buyers for these businesses internationally. And then the striking light came to me when, within the IMAP network, I participated at one of the bi-yearly conferences, and our Czech partners explained to us that even then, in 2012, after finishing or concluding 10 successful transactions, 100% of the buyers were coming from their own country, which meant that it was not or at least that was our conclusion and the realization, that it was not a Hungarian specificity that international buyers disappeared, but it was a Central Eastern European phenomena. And I can go into the details what we understood by then on a macroeconomic level, why that happened, because it did not mean that these countries were cut off of international trade. It was more that they were all integrated into the international flows through the being integrated into the international trade flows and supply networks. And then the international companies were not any longer interested, for all different reasons, to actually buy the companies they needed supply from, because they could just very easily get it through the trade flows, so they didn't need to actually own these businesses. So this is when we realized that we need to find local Hungarian investors for the local Hungarian mid-market deals. And this is what brought us to very new territories.
It's so interesting how you identified what was going on in the economies, the learning from IMAP and your Czech partners, and this kind of structural problem that the trade has reduced the amount of international buyers. So I guess this is where it gets really interesting, right? You've got these strong founder-led businesses locally, but no real natural buyers or succession solutions with less interest from international. So what was the moment when you really realized, hey, we need to build something different?
So at this point of time, we actually gathered a couple of pieces of information. And we did two things. When we realized that we need to find local buyers, we started contacting Hungarian entrepreneurs and Hungarian large companies. And that was a good move because the first 2-3 deals that we successfully closed after the takeover were done with local larger entrepreneurs or larger companies. So that's basically a local consolidation game, be it vertical, horizontal, or financial investment. We all had those. And then I had a couple of kind of experiences that I put into this. And I remember having thought this through with Christian Orban, my partner, who was supportive, of course, because he's always very supportive of any idea, but he was a bit skeptical. And then let me tell you a couple of experiences that I brought into what we started building. The first was that the team sold the company in Hungary 2 years before we actually bought the business to two managers whom they brought into an industrial deal that they represented. And these two managers acted initially as interim managers to the business. So they brought them in as interim managers, and then they realized that this is such a great business that they would not only manage it, but they would buy it. Now, arguably, this is a quasi-MBI MBO, whereby they were outside managers, like in any MBI situation, but in fact, they were managing the business for half a year. So from this perspective, they were inside managers who are actually really MBO investors. That was one of the experiences. The other experience I had at that time was my INSEAD studies. I did MBA at the Singapore campus of INSEAD, and we had a course which had the title Realizing Entrepreneurial Potential. And what the professor teaching that course really meant by this was effectively the MBI concept. So what we went through was a live trial, so much so that we actually even interviewed. We found a Singaporean company which was up for sale. It was a sea service company bringing all kinds of supplies to large ships with small boats. We did the financial analysis. We put together even an offer, and then we stopped doing it. But it was a live simulation of what we do with our MBI concept. So then I told to Christian that, look, I think one of the ways in which we can find buyers is actually trying to motivate managers who have been employed managers to take over these companies, partially because one of the learnings we had with working with all these companies which were up for sale is that they are actually missing, or they have been missing, the CEO position, because most of these companies have been managed by the founder owner. So it was by bringing in an MBI investor, that was my theory, solves two things. One, you have an investor, and secondly, you even have a manager that comes and manages the business. So it was really, in a way, based on all these experiences, my thinking, and then we started working on it. And we have been working on this concept ever since, more than almost 13 years.
It's amazing. Thanks for sharing. And it makes so much sense. So it almost like struck the lightning. You had that experience to actually test it, and then you drew it back to your studies and the testing or the scenarios that you built for your studies. So really interesting. Just to really clarify this MBI model, could you explain it in really simple terms for all the listeners so we can really connect with it?
So MBI model, the word MBI, has management buy-in, is somewhat self-explanatory and has been in the books for long. These days, some call it search funds, but if at the end of the day, it is the same concept. With a search fund, it basically you already have the cap table or the equity part before you start looking. In the MBI, you have people in mind with whom you are going to do the transaction. But effectively what this is, that in my mind at least, because some of the search funders are relatively young, and we can talk about the experience and skill set that a successful MBI investor might need. But in my mind, this is a person who is in their mid-40s, let's say, and then early 40s up to 50. That's basically the sweet spot. I've seen a few people doing deals when they are like 53. Above that, I think they are more risk averse if it's their first deal. So I usually don't see people above 50 doing this kind of deals. But effectively what they are, that people with 20 years experience in general management broadly, who arrive to a general manager, CEO, managing director position. This is important because if you did not manage basically production, sales, and finance functions together, then you might be perceived as one-sided, and you might not get investors trusting you in not messing up, right? So basically, at the end of the day, you need to be able to prove that there is no high risk because you have the experience. So these people doing transactions, how do they do it? These are 100% cases leveraged buyouts. So these are, in a way, the usual leveraged buyouts managed, organized by a manager who brings in basically the equity part through business friends, usually. And I can explain why it's usually not fully outside investors. So it's a combination of business friend money, bank financing money, and usually delayed payments, so even vendor financing. And then once the deal is done, in all these cases, these MBI investors, who are the core to the project, inject themselves as managers. They run the company for a couple of years, and then they have two strategies: either keep it as a lifestyle investment for forever and grow it and buy new businesses, etc. So basically do a consolidation game. That's what we usually see. Or they alternatively might want to sell it after 5 years. But in most of the cases, what I see is that these people, for different reasons, just don't sell it. They just keep growing and building those businesses.
Thanks for sharing. Makes, again, really clear. And I love it how you've, as I said, effectively created a new buyer universe. These experienced 40 to 50-year-old operators with skills and experience in finance and sales and able to link it together and build that trust and bring in investors can then take over the businesses. And again, I can see how it all connects together now with less international interest in buyers, but actually creating the buyers locally. So really smart. And you built a network of thousands of managers, hundreds actively engaged in this model. How did you go about building that network from scratch?
So that's the difficult part. It's not difficult at all. It's just time consuming. So that brings us really in the forefront of our competitors, because it was not difficult. We are a couple of seniors. We all talk to managers. We just cold call them through network, like people whom we know. We just did 4,000 meetings in the past 10 years. It's just 4,000 meetings. The only problem is that you have 250 working days, right? So anybody can do it after us. The challenge is that we always talk to managers about this. But out of this 4,000, we probably have not more than 10% hit rate for those who are interested. And then we did 55 deals over the past 10 years in this genre. So it's also a funnel. It's a sales funnel, it's a marketing funnel, and it's not better or worse, the success rate from beginning to the end. It's just long-term building of your business. This is what we've been doing. And you just have to start it, and you just have to have the long-term vision. Obviously, you build it up gradually, because at the beginning we only had a few projects that were fit to that type of investors. So the more we grew the investor base, obviously we needed to grow the number of deals that we can offer. So you build it out gradually. You have two types of people, by the way, who could be potentially interested in this. You basically need to have projects, you need to have people, and then you need to have equity financing. And we come from the world where we bring projects and we bring people together. There are some other people, There is now a German company, all interest aligned, and there is this Swiss company, Novastone Capital, and they are working on a little bit different because all interest aligned is actually a fund. Novastone is more like an advisory boutique which brings together monies. You can't have all the three. So we have projects and we try to find the people. These guys try to find the people and the money, and then they make them go after the projects. I think you need to choose one or the other because you can't be everybody for everything. You can't do the sell side and the buy side together. It's like investment banking. You do either the sell side or you do the buy side. And then this is how you build it out.
Again, I like the hustle. I love the hustle. Just 4,000 meetings you shared. I know that will make some of the listeners a little bit scared, but I think network comes up as so important for growing business and your career. And what a great way to turn an extra kind of origination or business development engine on. So congrats on what you have achieved. You shared, obviously, it's about 20% of the deals that have come through this. So that's clearly a big win. But how else and how powerful has it been for the business in other areas?
So look, you never know, as long as you really have an open mind of doing more and not doing something focused, then it can bring a lot of different things. So obviously these people appreciate, even if they decide that this is not their type, they appreciate being offered something completely different than any other people would talk to them, because they would say that, okay, go here, go there, do this, do that. And then I say, become an entrepreneur or become an owner. They just remember it, right? So we had so many different cases when those people started referring us to other potential buyers or even deals. They just don't forget this. They just don't forget the good 1 hour when they were thinking about themselves becoming an entrepreneur, even if they decide not to do it. And this is why I said at the beginning that we wanted to build our business on buy sides, and then we did not do, this was not leading to good results, but we still do lots of buy sides because so we are not the people who turn down buy-side opportunities, because in lots of cases you do buy-sides, you meet 10 new people, you might not be able to do a deal, but then 1 or 2 out of 10, 2 years later comes back to you, and then they turn sell-side. So the way we see it is that talking is good, listening is even better, but going into any meeting and any discussion with a very open mind, while bringing this idea to them, it is a winning combination, I find.
Do you say it's fair to be one of your biggest competitive advantages locally?
I would say it is, because obviously we never say to almost anybody that we are only going to bring this project to this universe. We always do the right things, right? So we try to identify through IMAP or through any other sources international buyers. And then obviously we talk to lots of local buyers, but we sell to them that, look, we have this small thing, this might work out or not, this might be something that people will like or not. I can give you one example whereby it was actually a British person living in Hungary, building his company here in Hungary, who worked in some kind of service sector business. They supported Henkel with packaging the small powders for marketing and special uses. And he had 20 international competitors, and he thought that one of them would be interested in taking him over. And nobody was interested. But then we also brought this to our MBI universe, and it so happened that 2 teams decided that this is for their liking, and they actually competed a full EBITDA verse of valuation up. And our client was so pleased that he just saw competition. He didn't care. I mean, at the end of the day, it ended up in very good hands. And by the way, the deal happened a year before COVID. So the company grew like mushroom in the COVID area because they produced these hand sanitizers
good
and
timing.
the likes. Timing is everything. But our client was very happy because he just saw competition. And at the end of the day, you care about good quality investors, but these were very credible people, both teams, and they competed up by almost a full EBITDA. So everybody was happy.
Thanks for sharing. Definitely helps us connect a bit more. Now, we've got a ton of investment banking leaders who are leaders listening and aspiring leaders. And we know that transition from execution to origination is one of the toughest. So having done what you've done, what can they learn? What can they learn from how you built this model?
With my partner and with my team, we are believers in the long-term view. And obviously, this differentiates us because we are effectively company owners and we don't have this quarterly and yearly reviews and KPIs. Obviously, we do it for ourselves, so we can afford that. But I think there have been, even in the international investment banking arena, there have been a couple of good examples for this. And there is no wonder why the boutiques are in renaissance. There was this guy, I don't have his name, you probably remember the name of his, who sold LinkedIn to Microsoft. He was doing this one thing for 10 years. That is a long-term view, right? And then he made 40 million or what. So I think this long-term is an important element. And the second thing is that, and we did not get it right in the first place, strategies has to be built on insight. And luckily, when we had the second shot, we got it better. But we didn't really have any other insight that we are probably going to be better with international buyers. And then we are going to, together with Wells Fargo, we can do a lot of deals. So I think these are two very important things that I learned. And the third thing is, I am not in favor of focusing in this business. And we might speak a little bit about how the market developed. But I think the market is not in favor of focus. The market these days, with all the uncertainties and changes and different difficulties, is more like a broader project base, because you cannot predict which segments of the economy is going to be hit at any given point of time. So I think the more balls you can throw up in the air and juggle, I think that is what we call multitasking. That is, for me at least, the name of the game in mid-market.
Now, adaptability, flexibility, especially in stable times, has never been more needed. So I can see that, and the entrepreneurial spirit as well. Let's talk a bit about the firm then. So your firm operates with a relatively small team, but really high output and strong market share. So how have you structured the business to achieve that?
So when we took over the company, which is the basis of our current operation, I realized one thing. So one of the very first projects, putting together the information memorandum, took us 4 months. And then I thought that this is not something that we can afford, but I didn't understand what went wrong. And then there was this other project whereby we created the document, we had meetings. It was a gem manufacturer, and the German gem manufacturer actually even gave an indicative offer, which we accepted, and they started having PwC working on due diligence. And 3 weeks later, they came down and looked at we actually went to Germany, we presented the products, and they were very much likable. And then they came after 3 years of starting the due diligence, and then they saw the plant. And then they realized that the plant was not of their liking for all different reasons. And this is when I realized that the issue was that at that point of time, that we actually had much nicer information memorandums than the targets themselves. So we actually oversold. We oversold that. And this is when I started realizing that our job is a lot of things like analysis and synthesis and storytelling, but it's mostly about psychology, understanding the buyers and the sellers. And if it's a psychology game, it's not about the information memorandums. And the information memorandum is not going to sell the business. If the information memorandum is better than the business, then it might sell, but then the realization hits you and comes from your backside. So we actually try to do things in a very lean way on administration. I can give you 2 wonderful examples. And I have to tell you that both come from my predecessor owner. So none of them is my innovation. And obviously, I have to tell you a bit of a background story. We are not a regulated business as in any other continental market. But our client mandate is barely 2 pages, okay? It's 1.5 pages. And I'm not saying that it does not contain every important element of the client contract, so much so that a couple of months ago, a German purchaser manager told me that this is wonderful. I can't put any other dots or take away anything. This is as perfect as it is. And he signed it. So I have international clients signing these pages. And what brings that to us? We probably had 500 contracts signed in the past 15 years. And only 3 times an entrepreneur told me that I have to get it through my lawyer. They understand it. It is in plain language. And I can tell you that we are now doing with a client of mine a transaction in Romania for which only the due diligence contract was like 5 different documents and I counted 73 pages. And that was for like a 40,000 engagement. How strange is that? And obviously, due diligence and obligations. So that's one of the things, like maximum 2 pages mandate letter. And the second is I never let anybody from my team go out with longer NDA than 1 page. NDA is specifically not my thing, because I don't think I'm in this world for 15 years. We know that NDAs are legally binding, but nobody was able to tell me even in the US, any kind of legal procedure based on NDA. NDA is more for guiding how we work together and reminding us what are the parameters of our work. But having four back-end forces on an NDA, it is not conducive to good work. So we try to really focus on what is important and what is less important to make execution work.
Makes a lot of sense. And again, simplifying things like contracts, making it easier for clients to gauge, making that start of the experience and work together more pleasurable and quicker is great, right? So it makes a lot of sense. And I think you also told me you built a quarterly publication, a large CRM, and this feels much more like a media output as well as a relationship engine. And that's quite different to traditional banking as well. How important has that been in building your brand?
It has been tremendously important. And look, I am a proud banker, but only at home. Entrepreneurs, they hate bankers. So why do you want to say that you are a banker if you know that the banker as such is hated? So yeah, I wear ties, and in lots of cases I dress like a banker. But we think that, so we are doing retail investment banking, right? So retail in a sense that we were the ones who started like this list of top Hungarian companies. And then we had the discussion, does it make sense to send out this kind of little leaflets saying that you are, and then lots of people said, oh no, this is not something that you do with entrepreneurs. In 20 different places, I can tell you 20 companies, which you find them on the walls, how better advertise your name than being associated with all these people. And we are very thankful for them, and I think they appreciate being recognized. The other thing is this publication, and again, I have to tell you, I didn't start it. We inherited it. We probably did it a little better and even nicer. We are at number 130. So for the past 20 years, we have been publishing this quarterly. To ensure quality, only us, we write it. And then we write it, it's not too long, we print it and we put in electronic format. But it is not only a newsletter, it is a real publication. And we even print like 3D, so the touch and feel is good. So and this is the only publication people get on M&A. We only speak about M&A and transactions and valuations and all these things. So it really helps us being in front of the people. And I can tell you, if somebody puts their heads around such a thing and starts doing it, it is not as time-consuming, but very importantly, you have to write it yourself, because if you start outsourcing, then the quality deteriorates, and then it doesn't become the gold standard. Luckily, we are the gold standard, and then we have a CRM. We have more laxed GDPR regulations, luckily, but people appreciate being addressed not regularly. We don't communicate more frequently than every 6 weeks or 8 weeks. But we have a CRM of 13,000 people, and one way or another, they see us at least once every 2 months.
Again, it's how intentional you are about this business development and origination and the extra hustle and the things that go around it to build that brand and build differentiation in the market. So again, I commend you on that, and it's great to hear your feedback. I know you also sit on the board of IMAP, as I mentioned, so you see different markets globally. What are you seeing today in terms of maybe buyer behavior, deal timelines, market complexity, or even AI? I'd love to hear your insights there.
So there has been lots of change in the past 15 years. When I started this senior role in investment banking, in the Anglo-Saxon world at least, if a deal did not close within 4 months, that was not a deal. Already that time, the average length was more like 8 months to 12 months in Central Eastern Europe. And nobody talks any longer about deals of 4 months length. So everything is just simply takes longer and longer. And this is why you need a larger density of deals, because if things take longer, it doesn't mean that you need to work longer. It just means that you have more idle time along the way, which you can fit with other projects which will take 8 months long. So that's one of the things. And the other is, you call it behavior, complexity. People are more jumpy, like buyers are more jumpy, or events are more haphazardly happening. And you just simply can't predict when the lightning strikes. So I'm also involved to some extent to the IMAP UK operation. We had a deal very close to being closed in the tourism industry when the whole Iran war hit, right? Who would invest to tourism industry in the times of war? And then reactions to people, I have friends within IMAP whereby some of the partners were not allowed to travel from Europe to Dublin because of the war. So how people are impacted by these very, very uncertain, complex times, and then what is the impact of those on deals, it's very difficult to predict. And you mentioned AI. I think AI is important, and I'm sure that you can have tons of long conversations about how AI impacts our work and our markets, like the transactions and the targets themselves. I think obviously there is a way in which efficiency improvement gains can be gained, and we are all doing that. And the other is that there are industries where there is a significantly more impact of the threat of AI or the opportunity of AI, and we've seen it in software businesses. Having said that, public valuations are much more affected, in my view and understanding, than private deals. The software segment is one of the few segments where we've seen a boom in Central Eastern Europe. We just see now a large number of consolidators of vertical or horizontal software businesses who are coming to Central Eastern Europe, and we don't see a major drop in valuations either. So how AI is going to have an impact, it's, I think, not yet fully determined. Whether it's going to have an impact, that's for sure.
Thanks for the insights. I really appreciate your international view and your viewpoint, having the connection that you do with IMAP. And I agree with you. It comes back to that. So much going on, geopolitical, so much changing in the landscape, deal making, times, behavior, AI. How can we be adaptable and roll with that and still be successful in the ever-changing markets?
If I can circle back a little bit to one thing, which makes me believe that in the next 20, 30 years, our job is not going to be fully wiped out, is that, as I said, I think 50-60% of our job is psychological, and I haven't seen AI being very sensitive in talking to entrepreneurs. So I don't see a human robot coming in and talking to any of my clients. So I think I am quite relaxed that we will have jobs to do, and obviously we need to use every efficiency improvement opportunities and skills and technologies to make our life easier and the deals more smooth. But the bulk of it is going to be done by humans, as long as there are humans on the board.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think that human connection and the relationship is king, and will only get stronger, I think, with AI coming in and that need for connection. Believe it or not, it's been an amazing chat. Believe it or not, we're coming towards the end. So one final question. I'll ask all my guests this question, Gábor, at the end, which is, I believe leaders are readers. And I guess it doesn't have to be just books these days, right? There's so many resources available. So what resources of books have really shaped your thinking that you'd recommend to our listeners?
So look, I love our clients and I love our real entrepreneurial clients. So what I really appreciate learning more and more so that I can relate to more and more people is those personal stories. And with all due respect, I'm not talking about the Elon Musks or the Bezoses of the world. They have their own space. But for me, these are the large deals. If somebody want to do mid-market transactions, they need to get exposure to lots of different entrepreneurs, their way of thinking, so that they can relate to the stories that some other people hear. Because these entrepreneurs love their story, but they also love being connected to people who connected some other different stories. So I think for us, and this is what I stress to my colleagues, is that the more they learn from all different people who made successful ventures in the mid-market transaction or the mid-market space, the better their connections will be to any new business developments they are doing.
Definitely learning from those around you, right, and taking the lessons, I think, is super important. Gábor, this has been an amazing conversation. It's been so interesting learning about your journey, how you've built such a successful boutique, and of course, your really unique origination approaches such as MBI and the publication. So thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to spend it with me and our listeners today. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it as well, and thank you very much.
Take care. This episode of the podcast was brought to you by the Investment Banking Leaders Club. And to keep leveling up your career, join the club at ibleadersclub.com for exclusive insights, leadership strategies, and career growth resources straight from the industry's top professionals. I want to say thanks to our key partner, Outram, the global leader in financial deal gifts, awards, and recognition, for their ongoing support of our mission to empower both aspiring and senior investment banking leaders. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, best of luck on your growth journey.